Colin, welcome to this version of the TopSoil webinar and TopSoil podcast. Excited to continue our conversation about SAF and all this. It's like everyone wants to talk about SAF, Astri. I don't know.
I know. I know. It's
It's
the
just
it's the
like
new
massive deal.
buzzword. It's the new
It's huge.
buzzword. It's a pretty big deal. It's a big deal and we're excited to
Only a,
talk more about it.
only a what, a 35 billion gallon a
Yeah.
year opportunity for the US and
Yeah, just a
dude,
small problem that we're
it
trying to solve. But yeah,
kind of
huge
kind of blows
huge market.
kind of blows my mind. Just trying to think about how can we actually get this done. We'll dig into that here in a little bit. Um, so I'll tee things up just a little for anyone that doesn't know. I'm Mitchell. I'm the founder and CEO at Continuum Ag. We're a software company helping and based in Iowa. We're for farmers, by farmers, helping to manage data, and specifically here recently helping farmers manage data to quantify and document their carbon intensity. We're going to talk a lot about that. That is front and center with this whole sustainable aviation fuel discussion. How do we decarbonize these hard to decarbonize industries, right? That's what they call it. Hard to decarbonize. It's like this whole anyway, I just think that whole concept is just kind of funny. Anyway, but helping farmers to manage this data, we're going to dig into where we see a lot of those opportunities. Excited to have Astri Martin here. She's with Southwest Airlines and a kind of a branch of that, right? It's the SAFFiRE opportunity. I'll screw it up, so I'll let her give her own intro. But Astri was one of our keynote speakers at this year's TopSoil Summit. We've got some of the material there. We just want to dig a little deeper and have this conversation for anyone that wasn't able to join us at the summit or folks that have additional questions. And we do have some from the summit that Diana's got queued up for us that we weren't able to get to during the TopSoil Summit. So we wanted to have the opportunity to dig into those here today. But Astri, I'll help to kind of go through slides and that kind of thing.
Perfect.
But why don't I turn over to you? Number one, thanks a ton for joining us, for joining us at the summit. It was amazing. You had rave reviews, of course, and so excited to get you back here on the podcast. Continue this conversation. Like we were just joking, this SAF thing is absolutely massive. It is a huge, huge deal. But before we dig into that, maybe give a little bit more intro on yourself and
Yeah.
kind of your role and all that, and set the stage here for us today.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for having me. The Topsoil Summit was also so fun. That was my first time in Iowa. Was so excited to be there. Loved it. Hopefully go back soon. I was just telling Mitchell though I did get stuck there. There was a bit of a weather issue and all of the things, so I did spend more time there than expected, but it's all fun. But yeah,
I was
excited.
just so exciting though.
I
Like
know.
you just
I
probably wanted
know.
to stay for like a month.
I know. It was a sign. It was like
Yeah.
you're meant to be here for longer than
Yeah.
the original scheduled trip. But yes, like Mitch said, I'm Astri Martin. I am the senior manager of strategy and operations for Southwest Airlines Renewable Ventures, which is our venture capital arm, completely focused basically on achieving or procuring economic sustainable fuel for the airline. As Mitch just said, it's a huge problem. I think all commercial airlines are trying to decarbonize. And one of the major levers that we have, really one of the only levers, I'll venture to say, is sustainable aviation fuel. And so Southwest Airlines developed SARV, Southwest Airlines Renewable Ventures, and we've been since then investing in companies, investing in opportunities that can get us this fuel. Just a brief background about me. I went to Texas A&M undergrad, and then I was in consulting for a while. I did consulting for 5 years. That was really fun. Did a lot of growth strategy, scalability, market expansion, those sorts of things. Went to business school and decided, didn't want to travel as much anymore with consulting. So joined Southwest actually in their corporate strategy team. So doing some internal consulting, which included some of this due diligence work for, how do we meet these obscene market demands and, just major SAF, problems and challenges that we're trying to solve. And so recently moved over to help with that full time. on the Southwest Airlines Renewable Ventures team, and it's been amazing. It's been great so far. But yeah, that's a little background about me. And Mitch, I'm gonna say this because it's your birthday, so I feel like you didn't mention that on the beginning, but now that this is being recorded, everyone send Mitch a shout out for his birthday. He is spending his morning talking to me, which seems so lame.
I
But
wouldn't have it
I'm
any
so
other way.
I'm so excited to be here.
Low carbon, low carbon, low
I
carbon
know,
intensity opportunities here.
I know. Proves the dedication,
Yeah,
just
it's wouldn't
but
have
yeah,
it any
thanks
way.
for having me. That's a bit about me, just a bit of the context on Southwest Airlines Renewable Ventures and what we're trying to do. So
And I think this slideshow better than me. I think
yeah,
you have a little bit of stuff about the fund and all that in here. Maybe we jump
yes,
into some of that. You'll have
yeah.
to guide me around here.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, and this is,
But
this is
maybe
just
yeah, maybe with this, because like this new venture thing, right? When did it start, and like why is it going on? Like what's prompting this? What's the
right.
story, I guess, of how it got going?
Yeah, definitely. So the Southwest, and like I mentioned, all US commercial airlines really are trying to decarbonize and meet their sustainability goals. And so this is this this slide that's on the screen here is our nonstop to net zero. This is our sustainability plan. And you can see there's a pretty aggressive goal here in 2050 to be net zero carbon emissions. And so there's a lot of things that we can do, a lot of things that are already in progress, reducing single-use plastics. That's sort of our immediate things. Electrifying some of the ground fleet, becoming more efficient, of course. But if you go to the next slide, it
So,
shows it in sort of a
oh yeah,
different
there you
view
go.
here. Yeah. That really shows, how we are going to, what are the opportunities that we have to decarbonize. And really, if you can, for those, the yellow here or towards the bottom, the 48% of our path is actually going to be sustainable aviation fuel. There's a lot of great things coming into the market. There's a lot of efficiencies. There's a lot of, opportunities to decarbonize. But the fact is, we have our aircraft they last a long time, and we're continuing to get deliveries. And so fuel and standard aircraft that I'm using the word standard meaning the aircraft that we're flying today, and obviously they'll get more fuel efficient, they'll be updated, all of those
Sure.
things, but they will require some sort of jet fuel that we know today, and SAF is that long-term plan that we have.
So,
And
and
it
for anyone that's listening to this on the podcast, not seeing what we're looking at here is a Southwest, plans for decarbonizing between now and 2050, right? Like you
yes,
were saying, that's the target to be carbon neutral 2050. 35% of the reduction is in just updating the fleet, which would be what? It's more fuel efficient,
yeah,
better.
yes,
Uh,
more fuel efficiency,
yeah,
efficient engines, like fleet, like different things to
fleet
modernize the fleet, making
modernization.
them
Yeah.
more dynamic, things like that.
Right sizing and stuff like that.
Yes.
And then you were talking
Mhm.
about, the ground vehicles where they can be hybrids or electric or
Right,
whatever,
right.
where they're
Mhm,
just standing on the ground. And then
mhm.
48% though, like half of the goal is using sustainable aviation fuel. So what
Right.
that would be, and you've got on here replace 10% of the jet fuel with SAF,
Yes,
but that's by 2030, right? Is that what
right.
this is saying? So by 2030, it'll be 10% SAF, 90% regular jet fuel. But
Yeah.
then by 2050, what does it need to be to
A
get
hundred,
this
a
target?
hundred, a hundred
100%
percent is
SAF.
the,
Yeah,
is the goal. And these worth noting that these goals are scaled with the SAF Grand Challenge set by the DOE. And that SAF Grand Challenge is, as I understand, set by available feedstock in the US that
sure.
make sustainable aviation fuel. So with that SAF Grand Challenge, we are participating in that fully, and we want to commit to that. And so part of
Yeah.
that commitment is, by 2030, replacing 10% of our jet fuel. But as we move through the years up to this 2050, as you see, it's replacing 100% of our jet fuel
Yeah.
with
Awesome.
sustainable aviation fuel. And there are blend rates and things like that. You know, it's like the SAF is blended with jet fuel and those sorts of things, and that will become more efficient, hopefully, as the infrastructure develops. But that is, you know, it's a huge problem. You know, we're in this energy transition, and we have to have meaningful financial infrastructure to make it happen.
Yeah.
So I think that's what sort of the problem that or one of the challenges that we're seeing with SAF is, you know, we're building a market at the same time that we're trying to use it. And it's competitive, it's challenging, it's expensive. And, you know, it's just one of those very ambiguous challenges that we're trying to figure out, especially at the airline. But it takes a lot of, you know, value chain partners coming in together, because you can't just go out and get SAF without the growers, the farm, you know, all of the people that participate to make it happen. So it's complex.
All of it. And so to back things up just a little bit, so we're talking about SAF, right? And we kind of jump right in and talk about acronyms and stuff. And you mentioned it. SAF is Sustainable Aviation Fuel.
Yes.
My understanding of it, it's a drop-in fuel, they call it, right? So it would straight up replace fossil fuel, jet fuel. So like with ethanol, for the most part, you know, we're blending ethanol at a 10 or 15% rate with regular gasoline. Nobody's necessarily burning pure ethanol. They do in Brazil, but in the US, we don't burn pure ethanol. But with this, you're saying we could burn pure SAF.
From what I understand right now is we will need to blend it with jet fuel. Right. And right now, you know, and obviously we're high blend rates right now. But I think the goal for the market is to make that blend rate more efficient as we continue on the development of SAF, sustainable aviation fuel.
Interesting. So what's interesting, so in reading through some of the small text here at the bottom, part of this whole SAF thing, right? And the focus here is the carbon intensity score of the SAF has to be significantly lower than regular petro jet fuel, which my understanding today, petro jet fuel has a CI score of about 89. Is that the standard or the number that's
give or take? You know, there are different life cycle analysis that have different varying numbers, but around 89, 90 is jet fuel.
So I think at least Department of Energy, and I know for the 40B guidance, and I'm assuming what they're going to do for 45Z, right? The US tax credits are going to help to fund this decarbonization, that they utilize 89 as the default number. And in order to qualify for 40B or 45Z, you have to have a score 50% lower. So what, 44 and a half or whatever. And that CI score, the score that you've got there is in grams of CO2 equivalent per megajoule, which is very similar to how we are displaying it within TopSoil and stuff, where we show kilograms of CO2 equivalent per MMBTU, which is, and we're doing that because that's what the units are for 45Z. Is that, but similar kind of thing. But what's really important on this though is you guys saying the target here is that we need the average CI score of the fuel to be a 15. So not 89, not 44 and a half, a 50% reduction, an average of 15. Like that's super low. Super low score. So maybe explain that a little bit more and a little more context on.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for catching the small print. Not everyone does
but this is the key piece that we really nerd out on, and seeing like some of the folks that are that are watching the webinar too, like these are the nitty-gritty details that we are really trying to thoroughly understand, putting an actual number to it, right? Like doing SAF is great, but we got to have the real numbers to really tell the story.
Absolutely. And you know, the airlines, everyone is a business, right? And at airlines, our top driver of cost is fuel. So our goal is to not pass any cost of SAF onto the customers, meaning right now SAF is very expensive to make. That means it's very expensive to buy, and that means it's challenging for airlines to purchase SAF at a way that makes their economics work in a way that makes sense. And so when we reduce the CI to a carbon intensity that is around 15 or less, the lower we can get the CI, the more attractive the price is for the SAF. Meaning the lower the CI is, the less we get more credits. As we understand, obviously, credits is kind of an unknown thing right now, especially as we move into November. But for how we do our modeling, we understand that the lower the CI, the less cost it is for SAF to procure neat SAF.
Sure.
And so,
because it moves the needle further, right?
correct,
So the
correct,
lower the fuel, so, and that's just like how we're thinking about it on the farm too, right? With the feedstock.
absolutely. Yeah,
If like on my farm, my CI score on my corn last year was a negative 4.1, that moves the needle more than corn that has a score of, 10. Even though 10 is still great compared to the default of 29.
absolutely. Yeah.
But the bigger the change, the more
The bigger
impactful,
the
right?
change, the closer that the cost of SAF gets to parity with Jet A.
Yeah,
And I think for Southwest, and I venture to say all commercial airlines, like, we want to make this as economic as possible.
for sure.
You can go out and get SAF very expensive, but it ultimately, that cost has to be made up somewhere. And we don't want that to be transferred to our customers. We want to strategically procure it in a way that is economical for us.
Yeah.
And we found that by reducing the CI score is really the main way that we can do that.
Right. So you're buying a gallon of SAF that today is expensive, but if
Right.
it has a really low CI score, when you blend it in, it helps to meet your goal more. So you can kind of dilute that
Absolutely.
cost, right? Okay.
Yep.
Makes
Absolutely.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I know we've got some other slides on that. So let's circle back to this. There's a couple really good questions in the Q&A though. Appreciate you guys putting those in. Peter
Sure.
pointed out here, what's the dip early part? I would assume that there would have been a dip more like COVID kind of years and stuff, right? But do we know what the dip is in the 2016 time frame there?
You know, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
figure
like,
out.
I feel like I should know that. To
Yeah.
be honest, I always focus on sort of 2030 and beyond.
Yeah.
So, thank you for whoever called that out. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. Trying to think, Tony's, I'm not sure.
2016.
I'm not sure. I know for us, we started to really focus on sustainability around the 2018, 2019 is when we really started to dive in here. So it could just be
It might be just the way that the graph is made here too, because it looks
right.
like the graph points over in the 2015 kind of stuff. Maybe that's
Yeah.
it's just kind of how they made it or something. But it is
Yeah.
an interesting like
Yeah.
okay, what's
Great
going on
call
there?
out.
Is
Very
it
detail oriented person on the call.
we have
Appreciate.
to we have to do some digging.
I
Get
know.
on the
Yeah.
teams get on the
Yeah.
teams chat after here.
I
But
know.
but to your point though, right? It's more so okay. Things have been kind of leveling out
Right.
more so since you've been really trying to understand the data,
Right.
2018 through 2020, and then more
Yep.
recently as we've been trying to really figure that out. So that's probably where there's
Yep.
better data. We know that the trend is going to continue to go up because
Right.
Southwest is going to keep growing. They're not going to get smaller, going to do more
Right.
flights, going to do more business, right?
Right.
So the footprint's going to go up. So we have to offset that even
Yep.
more aggressively than what we're doing today.
Yeah. Correct. Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, what a couple other questions here on the SAF to renewable diesel, and will you prioritize soybean to renewable diesel to sustainable aviation fuel or ethanol? Okay, that's a different question. So, but the SAF to renewable diesel, and I can help on this too, but
Yeah.
maybe explaining kind of that drop-in fuel and what exactly is sustainable aviation fuel when thinking about renewable diesel, biodiesel, ethanol, sustainable aviation fuel.
Right. Yeah. And Mitch, definitely would look to you to help with
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
I'll actually toss it to you.
No, the main thing I think what they're getting at, I'm not an expert in this at all either, but my understanding and how I would answer this is sustainable aviation fuel. I think what brought about is when I was talking about the drop-in fuels and stuff like that, right? So
Okay.
sustainable aviation fuel is a drop-in fuel, meaning it can just straight up replace jet fuel. Renewable diesel is the same concept. You could fill up your tank with diesel or renewable diesel, and they work the same. Versus biodiesel, you have to blend. It
Mhm.
has to be blended. And you guys are saying for SAF, it still mostly is still
It's
going to be blended because
Mhm.
nobody
Right.
has enough. And part of it is there's not enough SAF to only burn SAF. It's being blended, but that's kind of the concept. So SAF and renewable diesel though are similar concept where they can just be straight up replacement for the fossil fuel alternative.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and a lot of
but
that too, it just with the blending and with sustainable aviation fuel is also just with, you know, our fleet. Like I mentioned, we have our aircraft, you know, they can last for a long time. And so we have some engines that will be older, some that will be newer, some that will be more efficient, some that will be less efficient. And so those blending that was like that's how we will need to decide the blend rates of what our engines in the actual airplanes themselves can
yeah,
handle.
for sure. And I think that's what Todd's kind of getting at here in his points too. Like these engines are already like pretty dang efficient. They have to be
Right.
super powerful. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking
Yeah.
about, decarbonizing your fleet and stuff and being more efficient, but like,
Yeah.
do you see there being some big changes going to happen there? Or kind of to his point, it's smaller, more
Yeah.
incremental changes and tweaks?
I think it will, you know, the latter point there.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine, you know, and even if there are large changes that come through, we still have, you know, an entire fleet of aircraft that won't have that engine capability. So
Yeah.
it's, you know, you're trying to solve multiple problems at once
Yeah.
within the aircraft. But yeah,
And
I think that's a great point.
changing over airplanes can't all just be done right away. They're a little bit expensive.
Yeah, just a
From what I've
little
heard
bit.
anyway. From what I've
Yeah,
heard.
just a little bit.
So this Alicia's got some really good questions here too on, and I think it leads into maybe where we can go next with this conversation of you guys' thoughts and how are you going to get there, right? So how are we going to get enough SAF? And her question being specifically, are we prioritizing HEFA to SAF, which is I think of it as more what fats and oils based feedstock. So that's where biodiesel would fit in
Mhm.
or use cooking oil or animal fats and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So,
yeah,
but and then you have alcohol to jet, which is ethanol being converted
right,
into stuff. And you can use both, but maybe to
right.
answer the question, what's the prioritization between HEFA to SAF or alcohol to jet?
Yeah, definitely. So we think at Southwest, well, first off, just in general, we need all pathways to work. That means we need
Yeah,
ATJ to work, HEFA, FT, woody biomass. Like we need them all to work to be successful. At Southwest, we have, you know, some certain like this or I actually don't know if any of the charts show them, but we do have some parameters that we set to obtain sustainable aviation fuel, meaning we need clean feedstocks. You know, we need a certain amount of CI reduction, certain parameters that we set. And so that does challenge some of the, you know, SAF that we could potentially get. However, as I just discussed with Mitch, you know, we need it to be cost effective, right? And the way that we are figuring that out is by lowering the CI score, which usually comes with more like cleaner feedstocks and things
yeah.
like that. So it's all a circle, it's all a cycle.
Yeah, and by that you mean you're monitoring how you're approaching like the used cooking oil and stuff. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Or maybe that's another just question of
Yeah,
what's your guys'
not
take
necessarily.
so far? Obviously, this used
Yeah,
cooking oil thing, it's kind of it's a little
right.
bit touchy right now, right? Of
Yeah,
like what
yeah,
constitutes as used cooking oil. Maybe tee that up a little
absolutely.
bit, but you
Yeah,
guys
absolutely. And I think that's, you know, I think we're looking at all pathways. So we have ATJ, alcohol to jet, which is using ethanol. We are also looking at HEFA. That's what you're just talking about, fats, oils, greases, you know, those sorts of things. And we're also looking at Fisher Trope opportunities, woody biomass, municipal solid waste. We're engaging on all of the different topics. We've found that ATJ is you know, is uniquely positioned to be successful because of the opportunity that it has to reach lower CI scores because of the feedstocks. Corn
yeah,
stover, for example, that we're talking about, and some of the other, you know, residue biomass that is out there. And I'm calling residue bio like that's what we've been calling corn stover, but obviously, Mitch, correct me if that's not an appropriate term.
mhm,
But when we look at HEFA is attractive right now because it's a much more mature technology. ATJ is, you know, it's their LanzaJet just opened the first plant. But it's not as you know, fully as proven out as a HEFA or an FT process.
Right.
So HEFA is attractive to us because we can obtain it relatively quickly. However, the feedstocks are a little bit more limited, meaning the fats, the oils, the cooking oil. They generally have higher CI scores than ATJ, and it's expensive relative to the other pathways, but it's one of the ones that's producing right now. So,
and to your point, it's kind of all the above, right? We got to the volume that's needed here is so massive that we have to kind of have all the above. And to put some numbers on that, right? From what I've learned in this space, the US goal is something like 30 or 35 billion gallons of SAF by 2050.
Yes. Yeah.
Massive number. And you guys obviously would be a player, but there's lots of folks that have all banded together to say we're all going to do this, right? You guys aren't on an island by yourself.
Correct.
When using alcohol to jet, ethanol converted to jet fuel, it takes something like 1.7 gallons of ethanol to produce 1 gallon of SAF. I believe it. I'm sure it'll get, you know, maybe better over time.
About a 40%. Yep.
But it's something like that, right? 1.7 gallons of ethanol in to 1 gallon of SAF out. And today in the US, we have capacity to produce like 17 billion gallons of ethanol. Right. If we used every gallon of ethanol that we produce to produce SAF, that'd be 17 billion gallons in at a 1.7 gallon ratio. That means 10 billion gallons of SAF out. That's only a third of the demand. So that would be 100% of all the ethanol, which isn't going to happen because we still got to drive vehicles and use ethanol for all kinds of other stuff. But if we were to use 100% of the ethanol today and only did alcohol to jet, that would only get us a third of the way there. So like we have to have these other components as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It really does all need to work and come together. We are not exclusively looking at one pathway over the other. Each pathway has its pros and cons, and we have to assess that. You know, there's processes being developed. It seems like every day, you know, it's been really incredible to see that, you know, ingenuity that's coming, you know, to the forefront here. But it is something that we can't, you know, we're looking at it all. We're interested in it all. And learning, you know, and I mentioned this when I was at the TopSoil Summit, Southwest, we are wanting to learn. We really, you know, we need this SAF, but we also want to understand how we can make this a sustainable practice for everyone involved rather than, you know, just getting off takes, getting what we need. Like this is a problem that is going to be long-term. This is a long-term transition. You know, how do we build and develop this market out in a way that's meaningful and effective?
And that's what Alicia's asking about, you know, the different feedstocks. We've been hitting on a lot, but maybe specifically talking about the sugarcane ethanol going to SAF. And I know at the LanzaJet facility, they've been doing some of that, but maybe you guys' approach to sugarcane ethanol specifically.
Yeah, so our approach, we haven't necessarily worked with sugarcane ethanol. We do have an investment in LanzaJet, which is using sugarcane. But I will say for SAFFiRE, which is one of our investments in SARV, Southwest Airlines Renewable Ventures, we are primarily using corn stover as our feedstock as we test. But we do have plans, you know, as we move through the process of development to test other feedstocks such as bagasse and things like that that come from the sugarcane. So no real plan right now, or like nothing in the works right now in terms of actually leveraging sugarcane besides obviously our partnership with LanzaJet.
But that's your investment in LanzaJet. That's not you guys. So LanzaJet's doing their thing. You're just an investor. For you guys, the actual deal is SAFFiRE, where you're using corn stover.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Got it. So okay, and I think you've got some slides on that. Maybe I jump into that.
Yeah, sure.
Or slow me down if we want to hit on some of these. And Rod, I've got some thoughts on yours. We're going to come back into yours. And Peter's, I think, trying to get towards that because that's kind of just what we were getting at here. Some of the technology and stuff you guys are working on.
Yeah.
The stover piece. So I want to jump to that because I know you've got some material.
Yeah, sure. I think I have it up here. I can. So SAFFiRE.
And with like these guys that are deep into
Yeah. The SAFFiRE slides start. Yeah, one more. These are the teammates. Yeah, okay, here we go. So this is, Mitch, you want me just to review like what SAFFiRE?
Yeah. Well, and especially Peter's asking, okay, so he's saying other than Vertimass, who is doing ethanol to SAF, how does SAFFiRE have a different ethanol to SAF technology? And that's what this is, right? Utilizing
Yeah.
the
Yes,
biomass
great
piece.
segue.
So that's to his point that we're going to get into camelina and stuff here after
Yeah,
that.
perfect. Yeah, great segue. So at SARV, Southwest Airlines Renewable Ventures, our cornerstone investment really has been SAFFiRE Renewables. It's a project company in partnership with the DOE, and we are trying to enable efficient production of 2G ethanol, renewable ethanol from corn stover and other agricultural byproducts. So as I mentioned, we're working on corn stover right now. That's our first feedstock we're working on. But we do have plans as we as we prove our technology out, as we develop to test other agricultural residues that fit within our process. So the way our process, there's some more slides here and it goes in to the process more in depth, but really we're taking corn stover and turning that into 2G ethanol. The way that that's differentiated from other 2G ethanols is really our pre-treatment. So our pre-treatment that we use, it soaks the corn stover in a way that makes it easier to process throughout the rest of the downstream system that produces the 2G ethanol. And we have a slide on also just the differentiators of that pre-treatment, but that's really our differentiator. And then ultimately that gets, yes, thank you, this is it. And then ultimately that 2G ethanol is converted to SAF using LanzaJet's ATJ technology. And so this is a little bit more of a in-depth, still very high level, obviously, but this is a little bit more of color about our process. This number 2 here, this section number 2 is our SAFFiRE technology. That is, the patented technology that takes the corn stover and pre-treats it. This is using NREL's. We have an exclusive license to NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab, their pre-treatment, this DMR, and it actually uses high pH and low pressure, atmospheric pressure, to mitigate some of the issues of previous cellulosic ethanol attempts. And so this is, like I mentioned, Peter, I believe, asked the question, but this is where we are trying to differentiate ourselves in the 2G market and be successful.
Because plenty of other people have tried to do cellulosic, corn stover going to ethanol with varying levels of success, right? So, but the difference here is, hey, we've got this pre-treatment thing that it starts the fermentation process or something like that.
Yeah, it soaks it and pre-treats it in a way that is able to move through the back end process more successfully. I think from what I understand, the previous attempts had clogging issues, just different things that happen as you're testing technologies. And as a refinement and as some learnings from those previous cellulosic ethanol attempts, this is a pretreatment that NREL developed that seems to be, or that has been tested at a bench scale, in a pilot bench scale capacity that is hopefully going to be, tested out more further. I think you have the timeline up there, but we are pre-pilot phase still, so we haven't necessarily tested this technology yet outside of what's been tested at the NREL laboratory. And so when we go and we're building our pilot plant this year. We're hoping to break ground here in the next couple of months at the Archelon, at Conestoga's Archelon facility in Liberal, Kansas. And so once we develop that site, that's where we will actually really begin to test this corn stover pre-processing treatment, and then the back end, which is more consistent with what's currently done at ethanol facilities today.
Got it. And then down there, that'll just be producing the ethanol, or will you have a jet? Will you have an actual ATJ facility there?
Yeah. It'll just be the 2G ethanol. We'll be transporting our 2G ethanol to the Soperton site in Georgia,
to the
LanzaJet site, and they'll be upgrading or converting that
for now, right? Until there's more SAF production facilities that get up and going. What
Yeah.
about, okay, so a couple of questions here in the chat that are good about camelina or other products, right? Any
Yeah.
take or thoughts on you guys' approach there, or is it still just focused on the corn stover for today and
Yeah.
haven't necessarily focused on those ones yet?
Yeah, the other feedstocks are definitely on top of mind. So we do not plan, we want to test this on other feedstocks because as we know, this is a huge problem or a huge challenge, a huge market. And so, we want to use as many feedstocks as possible.
Yep.
The reason why we chose corn stover right now is just because of the abundance in the US market. There's 14 billion, Mitch, you probably could correct this, 14 billion bushels of corn each year. There's 400 million tons of corn stover just about, but we do understand not everyone harvests their corn stover. And that's a different beast that we can talk about in terms of our challenges with supply chain. But we do think that just from an abundance standpoint and being able to reasonably test our technology, corn stover is widely available, an ag residue, low CI, or can help lower our CI, and we chose that to move forward with the testing process of this. But moving forward through our scale up plan, as we develop our processes, as we establish more partnerships, absolutely plan to test other feedstocks that could work in our DMR technology, which
So I
is
want to
that
double tap into that real quick. Then I'm going to come back to the camelina piece again too, because I had another thought there. But in our CI chit chat yesterday, my buddy Brian he's not able to join us today. I don't know that he's on, but Brian wanted me to ask the question specifically about what you were just getting out there, which is we're looking at the corn stover. But his question is, okay, well, how does that impact the CI score, right? So does corn stover have a low CI score, and how do we balance that? His question was specifically on what's the CI score, and then how do we balance the soil health impacts of
right.
removing some of that corn stover? How are you guys approaching that?
Yeah, great question. And that's why we are, interested in the opportunities and incentivizing farmers to lower their CI. Because right now, as we understand, the CI of the farm and the CI of the corn is what is attributed to the corn stover. Since it is an ag residue, it's treated as a biomass, and so it would otherwise be sitting or laying on the field emitting carbon. We're repurposing that corn stover, which is able to sequester some of that carbon. However, to that point, it's almost I think, I don't remember who you said asked that question.
Brian, yeah.
Ryan. But it is, interesting because I think, Mitch, actually, I was talking to this about your farm, and you were giving me the analogy of, I have this low CI, I need my corn stover because it's like a human metabolism, and it just needs that, nutrients. And so that's one thing that we are increasingly trying to build knowledge of.
Sure.
We plan on we don't plan on removing all stover from any farm, only like what's sustainable, the excess. We definitely understand that there is a lot of value that the corn stover brings to the field. Yeah. It would be the excess that's brought in, and then but we're trying to understand with this lower CI, we want to make sure farmers are incentivized in a way that's meaningful to lower the CI of their crop. So that way we start with a lower CI corn stover, which ultimately just influences a lower CI of our process. Got it.
Okay, lots of stuff I want to hit on there. So, and one, I think it is good that, it was great that you picked that up right at the deal where I know on my farm, we would not be in the market to remove our corn stover. We've looked at this in a lot of different, we've been approached by a variety of different projects for different purposes of taking that corn stover. I need that corn stover because I got to keep feeding the beast out there. That my soil health is really cranking now. We've been no-tilling for a long time, cover cropping for a long time.
Right.
So I need to keep more residue out there and get more aggressive with my winter covers and that kind of thing, which ties in. I'm super bullish on winter crops like a winter camelina or pennycress. We do a lot of rye today and harvest cereal rye for cover crop seed. But if we are going to be removing some stover, we got to make sure that we're putting stuff back, right? And to your point, focusing on soil health and building up the biology, building up organic matter, but also there's just fertility nutrients that we are removing there
Right.
as well. And our fertilizers have a super high carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So we have to factor that in when we're thinking about the holistic system of putting on more fertilizer, exposing the soil to the elements. So there's a
Absolutely.
balance to it. But I mean, do you feel like there's things that maybe this group could help you guys to better understand there? I don't know. I'm just spitballing ideas.
Yeah, well, first off, absolutely. We are, not in the farming business. We have so much to learn from all of you. And part of that is sustainably removing stover. We went through some successful harvests in Kansas where our pilot site is. But it's very dry climate, different, and that's also something that we need to understand is we're going to have to take a very deliberate regional approach based off the different farms, based off the different sustainable practices that are being used or not, the weather. There's so many factors that come in. And so what we're interested in is just hearing and understanding how either corn stover is harvested today, why it's not harvested today, what would it take to harvest corn stover. So Mitchell, you just mentioned, we'd need something to facilitate that fertilizer that's being removed, or
Yeah.
that nutrients that's being
We got to
removed.
factor that in, right? Because that's going to impact the CI score for the
Absolutely.
following year.
Yeah.
And it's going to hurt the CI score for the following year. And so it is that holistic approach, right? And I think
Yes.
obviously that's
Yeah.
where Continuum
Right.
fits. We're trying to help farmers to balance that. But you had mentioned
Absolutely.
too, the overall thing that you're urging is, hey, lower the carbon intensity of that crop to begin with for low carbon intensity corn and the corn kernels, but also
Mhm.
the biomass that's left over,
Right.
that's gonna be lower carbon. Now, to your point, it sounds like it has a low CI score because it's a residue or kind of a byproduct of
Byproduct. Yeah,
corn,
definitely.
but it still has some kind of a CI score. And the lower the CI score of that acre, based on using cover crops or no-till or low fertilizer
Exactly.
or manure or whatever, that even that co-product then or that byproduct, it's going to have an even lower CI score if the whole
Exactly.
system has a low CI score.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but SAFFiRE and SARV, our whole approach is like growing the pie and making sure that it is like a sustainable market for everyone. And we can't make, for SAFFiRE specifically, we can't make this 2G ethanol without the feedstock,
For sure.
without that what's being grown. And so,
Yep.
we're starting, if you think about it like almost like, a string of pearls is what we've thought about before. But you have SAFFiRE kind of in the middle, and you have 2G ethanol, 1G ethanol producers, you have ATJ, you have the airline, and there's still like that front end piece that we're really, really intentionally trying to understand and see where we can make an impact and help is with the growers.
Yeah.
Because without the growers, the total back end part of the process is, it doesn't work. And then
Yeah,
you get back
100%.
in this cycle of, chasing off takes or chasing things that are very expensive. And so I think if we can build the market and work together, there's more in it for all of us, is kind of
100%
the
agree.
approach.
And you and I haven't been able to catch up yet on some Continuum stuff and need to, but that's obviously where we're trying to help farmers to get ready. And that's why I was
Yeah.
so excited to get you back on here and keep digging into this. Like, this is where
Mhm.
the world is going. And it's
Right.
all starting with what's your CI score. And we're
Mhm.
helping farmers to understand that, right? We're over 300 billion bushel or 300 million bushels.
I was about to say, I was like,
Sorry,
oh my gosh, y'all
300
really.
million bushels, 300 fit, over well over 300 million bushels, about 1.6 million acres. The average CI score is an 11.1. So instead of being 29.1, we're at 11.1. That's kilograms of CO2 equivalent per
Okay.
MMBTU. Okay, so that's for
Yeah.
445Z. And but that 18-point reduction and what farmers are already doing. And then we encourage them to go even further and
Mhm.
adequately compensate them for those reductions. And I think this really rolls. So,
Yeah.
um, and
Yeah.
a quick note for everyone too, there is I got a little birdie told me yesterday, and I got the letter and stuff that there's a little bit of movement on Capitol Hill to urge the Department of Treasury to get some 45Z rules out there, use the actual GREET model, and get us some momentum we can really build off of here. Because I think you and I talked about it before too, right? The 40B rules are not conducive to bring the farmers
Right.
to the table. But
Right.
if we can do 45Z correctly, it can really work, which brings up my
Right.
next question. It's very clear to me how to score the bushel in the GREET model. Can we actually score the feedstock in the GREET model today, or you guys have to kind of do your own analysis and that's part of your collaboration with the DOE?
Yeah, I think part of our honestly collaboration is to get more like just improved treatment of biomass in general in like the GREET models and in just the different scoring scenarios. We've run a few independent life cycle analyses that helps with the biomass, or I'm sorry, the residue feedstock that can help us attribute what that means. But for now, we're taking the stance that a lower CI acre is a lower CI product,
Yeah.
including the corn stover. And so there is a lot of work, that we're trying to do just for cellulosic ethanol in general to have a more clear, better treatment and what that means for ATJ and just other opportunities where you can use ag residue.
Yeah, it makes sense. And so it sounds like it's still the approach there is get your scores put together kind of the way that
Right.
we're doing it today,
Yeah.
knowing that there's a little bit of some tweaking that's got to be done to some of the math and the
Yeah.
outcome scores to really
Absolutely.
have that.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
got some time. We got some time on to
Yeah.
get all that sorted. So, okay,
Yeah.
I want to go into Rod's got a great question stuff here on a couple different things. So Rod's farming up in Minnesota, wanting to do winter camelina or wanting to, and mostly wanting to get a new crush facility going. There's a lot of things happening there.
Yeah.
His specific question is, hey, is this something that you guys want to take a look at and invest in? But I also want, before you get into the answer, I want to put in a plug that Rod, be sure to join our upcoming webinar. I've got a slide on it that they'll hit on. We've got Paul joining me on the next webinar from Chevron REG, who is exactly in this space, right? They have crush facilities. They are doing renewable diesel and biodiesel that then could go to somebody like a Southwest Airlines. So I think that's my hot take on the answer anyways, is
Yeah.
hey, Chevron, some of these guys that are in that space, they're probably somebody to talk to. But are you guys looking at more of these projects? Are you guys trying to actively invest in stuff like this? Or
I would say from a like an overall view is when it comes to this front end, we're still learning so much about what's going on. Like, why would I don't know, did you say Peter asked that question?
not
Or
Rod's
oh,
there.
Rod,
So
I
because
would
they're
love,
looking at trying to figure out how can they raise some support for a crush plant and like
yeah,
because
yeah,
this winter camelina or some of these other things, right? Sure, we can try to grow it, but like we got
right.
to get it processed, right?
Yeah,
It's the chicken and the
absolutely.
egg issue.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly right. I was just going to say that that is the perfect example of how the infrastructure, we're wanting these things, but the financial infrastructure is just simply not in place yet. Or if it is, it's far and few between. And so I would love to learn more from Rod and people who are participating in these sorts of things, trying to move the needle, because those are opportunities that maybe we don't invest, but we can be a partner, we can participate in different
Yeah,
ways,
sure.
because it's ultimately, like I said, it's moving the needle to achieve this market scale of 35 billion that we need. And we're not, we're interested in learning about everything that is on the market,
Yeah.
to
And
help
to the
facilitate.
whole point, right? The whole theme of this entire webinar is we got to have all of it.
Right.
We can't even
Yeah.
pick and choose. So I'm like,
Yeah. If
well,
there's
we'd
one
rather do this one than
takeaway,
this one. No, we got to have all of
yeah.
it.
If there is one takeaway, it is we have to have all of it. There are some pathways that we think are, uniquely positioned to be successful, but they all have to work. They
they all have
all
to.
need to be successful. And it's gonna take the whole value chain to come
Yeah.
together and make it successful.
In my mind, it's what's the bird in hand, right? Bird in hand is we got a bunch of corn, soybeans, we got a bunch of ethanol and HEFA that we already have. Can we
Right.
get that converted? But I'm super bullish on what Ron is getting at for the long term
Yeah.
of these winter oilseed crops because to
Yeah.
the math that I laid out, right? If we need 35 billion gallons of SAF and we don't have enough feedstock today to
Right.
fulfill that need when we still got to feed people and animals and export. We got to do all this
Right.
other stuff too.
Yeah.
So, and we can't make more land. So how do we
Right.
do it? Well, we got to use the winter time.
Winter crop. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I,
Someone came
we
up to me at the TopSoil Summit.
yeah.
I'm wondering if it was Rod, kind of talking about the same thing. And I was transparent. I was like, I'm also with SAFFiRE and SARB. I'm definitely on the commercial side, so not into the tech as much, and don't understand it as clearly as some of my amazing team members do. But it was eye-opening to have the conversation with the gentleman that I chatted with about his ideas with winter crops and how
Yeah.
that can sustain it, outside of just the little harvest that we get, or not
Yeah.
little, but short harvest that we get.
Yeah.
And so
I'm
those are
super
the
bullish
little
on it.
tidbits that are really helpful.
I'm super bullish on it. We've played with Camelina 2 years. Year one, I was very much less than impressed. This year, it worked better. Okay. And I'm in Southeast Iowa. It's going to be different regional areas, right? But I think
Yeah.
we have to open up that type of window. Again, to me, it's going to be a balance, right? Because
Yes.
I'm always going to approach this with a soil health first
Yes.
approach.
Yeah.
So we've got to keep building soil health. We've got to continue to build our resiliency into our systems, but we have to be able to do more with
Of
less.
course.
And so that winter window we've got to tap into.
Of
But yeah,
course.
whether it be a winter camelina or a winter pennycress or like a winter rapeseed or something like that, a different oilseed crop. I think there's an array of opportunities there. So I know it's where it's going.
Yeah.
It's just it is that chicken and the egg thing,
Yeah.
right? We have
It's,
enough
of
volume
course.
of the oilseed crop to warrant building a crush facility, but we
Correct.
need some offtake in order to get enough
Yep.
area covered. But
Yeah. It is the chicken and the egg is the perfect. It is, but it is, like I just mentioned, it's y'all, the farmers in this community that has been in this community for generations. I mean, it is just so amazing, the knowledge that y'all have in this space. And we are like humbly trying to learn as
yeah,
much as we
right.
can to, to be successful, but to also like make sure it makes sense long term, not just
Yeah,
contracts this year and maybe next year. Like we want this, we think that this is a transition for the long term. And
yeah.
we want to
And
make it that way for a
that's
while.
where I want to go to kind of take some of this home. Oh, there you do have maybe Rod can send you an email or
Yeah.
something here. And
Yes, please do.
any so I want to hit on what you were just saying, but any quick take on Peter's last question here about any people he should talk with about the Fisher trope side of things?
Um, for the Fisher trope, I think it's another opportunity that we're looking at. It is expensive.
Yeah,
It's much more expensive, but it's something that we're still looking at from MSW, municipal solid waste, and forest residues, things like that. But yeah, it is more of an expensive, a more capital intensive
yeah,
process, but it is one Fisher trope that has been proven for a long time. It's a pretty
sure.
low risk technology. And so definitely looking at it, and, interested in it, but like everything else, we're trying to learn as much about it and make
Yeah.
smart decisions about it.
So, and that's where I want to finish up here. And I got on here, our upcoming webinars. I mentioned Paul from Chevron. Chevron,
Yeah.
they REG, Renew. So he was a speaker at our event as well. So we're going to dig deeper with Paul, especially on the soybean side. We'll get on this
Yeah.
camelina piece and some of these other oilseed crops. And then Dana from RSM, they're one of the biggest CPA firms in the world, and one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the biofuel space. So we're going to really dig into 45Z and some of the specific rules here. But let's take it home with what you were just getting at here, because we're already running out of time, which is crazy. I feel like this has
I
gone
know. Flew
super
by.
fast. It's gone really fast. What else do we need to be doing here? You've got the audience, right? Continuum Ag and our farmers here. These are the farmers that are absolutely at the cutting edge of this CI thing. We've got data, we've got our scores, we've got all this stuff put together. What's your message, I guess, to those folks on, are there some specific things or some selfish asks
Yeah.
or maybe just a higher level raw message as well? But what's your
Right.
take to the audience?
Yeah, and honestly, I mentioned this at Topsoil. Every time I speak with a individual farmer, a harvester, anyone, my mind is just completely blown. Like Mitch, every time I talk to you, you have some sort of new insight about farming and how it fits in with SAFFiRE. It's just mind blowing how complex and like, it's just a very interesting and integrated community that we are really excited to hopefully be a part of. I think I don't have necessarily specific recommendations, because like I said, I'm absolutely trying to learn from you guys. But I would say, giving feedback about how like what incentives you need to lower CI and what incentives you need to participate in these climate smart ag practices, that will help us. Because like I mentioned at Southwest, we're trying to establish this market with all value chain members, 1G ethanol, 2G ethanol farmers, etc. So what can we do to make sure that you're being adequately incentivized, where you either want to harvest your stover or you want to participate in other climate smart ag, so that we know, how we can partner with you guys in a way that's meaningful, is really my request. And like I said, Rod and Peter and the people who have participated, like, I'm interested to just talk with you. Like, we don't know what we don't know. And so it's really interesting to understand as we start to develop these pilot plans and we start to harvest, we start to mobilize our supply chain. Like I said, we're working in Kansas right now, but we want to go regional, have a regional approach. And the more people we can talk to, the more farmers we can talk to, growers, Mitch, people like you that are integrated so fully in the system, it's very helpful.
That's awesome. So I love that with your request or your feedback there for everyone. And just about any other time I ask a question like that, or I've heard companies answer that question, they almost always say, adopt these practices, lower your CI, figure out how you're gonna, harvest this, whatever, figure out how you're gonna go and be in position to do this, right? Like go do this thing. You just answered it in the complete opposite way that I don't know if anyone has ever answered it this way, of you saying, tell us what you want to see for an incentive to be able to help us to go do this together, right? Rather than it being, no, you go pay for it, farmer, you go figure it all out on your own. And then, hey, maybe in the future we'll be able to buy it and then maybe you can make some money. No, it was, tell us what would it cost to harvest your stover, or what would it take to consider making that change? And what would it take to consider adding a cover crop or reducing your tillage or whatever that, climate smart practice may be. Like, so that's such the right approach and so awesome and just great to hear you say, like, just let's have a conversation. Let's make this work as a business thing for both of us.
Agree. Totally agree. And that's it. It's a huge market. 35 billion while we in. Let's regroup. 35 billion gallons. We need everyone to participate and be excited to participate.
So awesome.
Long term. So look at this
obviously,
picture.
We got our whole crew. The Continuum team keeps on growing, and we're continuing to look for more people too. But Astri, this has been amazing. We're at time here. Obviously, you and I could keep on going for a long time on this, and excited to get you back on at some point. I mean, what we're getting at here, it's such a huge opportunity long term. And last thing I would, of course, we're, for everyone seeing on the slide here, we've got a lot more resources and stuff. Diana put in the chat Astri's full recorded presentation from the TopSoil Summit. So be sure to go check that out on the Continuum Ag YouTube page. This is where the puck is going, and it's not going away. And you didn't even mention one time tax credits, right? That wasn't even part of the equation. You never even mentioned it. Obviously, it's there, right? We didn't dig into it, but this is you guys' goals and targets and ambitions, no matter what.
Right. We are, we're working, like, it fits in with the CI score. The lower the CI, the more tax credits we get, the more tax incentives, CI incentives we get. But, we do our modeling with and without credits, we have to, you know, we're trying to decarbonize, we're trying to make a cleaner world here. You know, and it goes, obviously, the more economical we can do that, the better. But there's a lot of work that's going into it to make it happen.
Yeah. Love it. Well, excited to continue to keep
Yes.
our conversations going, of course, as well. Lots to keep discussing, and keep up the great work on you guys' side. Like,
Yeah. Well, thank you
it's
so much
really
for having
opportunity.
me, and happy birthday. I
Yeah,
hope it
thanks.
was fun. I hope it
Everyone,
was a good birthday.
thanks for joining us
Yes,
today.
thank you, everyone.
And Arthur just put in they flew the Southwest Airlines CEO's old plane. That is super cool.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
that is very cool. And Peter, I'll send you an email or something here too. Would love to follow up as well. It's been
Perfect.
great. That's not the one that we did, but bye. Everyone have a great day.
Great. Thanks,
We'll talk to you
everyone.
all later.
Thanks. Talk soon.
Bye.